Hey there, welcome to MagnetiK Mumma, the podcast where we parent with nervous system wisdom, soul-led grit, and zero shame. I'm Steph, a holistic nurse, writer, and a mum who is keeping it real in the chaos. I'm giving you permission to raise resilient kids without losing yourself, because when you thrive, your kids can too. So let's get into the messy middle and find our magic. Friendship drama. Parents with teens or tweens have definitely been there. Mum, she won't talk to me. And then you ask, so what happened? Nothing. Everything. And you can feel her pain or their pain and the emotional storm brewing down in every way. Slam doors, muffled sobs, chat, mayhem. So we're going to talk about that today and more. Welcome, beautiful humans, to MagnetiK Mumma, where science and soul and a dash of Aussie realness navigating the messy middle of parenting and growing. I'm Steph, nurse, mum, and perpetual student of the teenage nervous system. So welcome back. And yes, today's episode is about the friendship fallouts that happen, anywhere between year 5 onwards. And if your kids have phones, the drama that can come from the text messages, hopefully after school, in the group chat, Snapchat, whatever chat it is that your kids have formed, or even, the lunchtime episodes that go on. Like, these kids are living and breathing at the moment a time and space where they are finding themselves. And as a parent, we can sometimes feel like it's our job to fix it. And now, if your child is between 10 onwards, basically, it's not your job to fix it. And perhaps even before 10, it's not really your job to fix it. You can definitely advocate and step up and what have you, but it's not really your job to fix it, because in doing that, you're actually disempowering them to work it out themselves. And we're going to explain, we're going to explore that a little bit more and look at some of the neuroscience and some of the, ancient wisdom that talks about teenagers and the rites to passage, and evolving from that little kid to the, emerging young person and growing into a young adult. So whilst it can feel really, sorry, I've got my dog here and she just decided. So it's been an interesting day. I went to record and the neighbours are mowing their lawns. And now my dog's decided that she needs me to pat her while I'm talking. Anyway, as I digress, it can feel like it's your job to, we get mama bear instincts. We want to protect, we want to make sure our kids are safe, and we want them, it's really, really hard to watch them suffer and feel left out or feel like they're being excluded. And, I'm really challenging you as a parent to just choose a different path if that is your go-to, or if, you want to talk to the other parents about what's going on to try and solve it for them, or you want to call the school and email the teacher and give them what for and, stand up for your kid because it couldn't possibly be your kid, or you feel it's unjust, or you feel whatever. Like, there's 100 million different scenarios, and I'm sure each one of you have been through something of that nature. But I just want to untangle the truth. And it's a bit hard to hear if you are a person who likes to fix things for your kids, or you can't really helicopter and find it hard to step back and let things happen, let the drama unfold. But I want to let you know that it's not actually a bad thing. And the drama that's happening with your child isn't actually the problem. It's the curriculum. This is where our teens learn how to navigate the difference. The difference in themselves, the difference in their friendships. They learn how to self-soothe after rejection. They learn how to choose relationships that actually match their values. It's emotional, it's messy, but it's rich and absolutely necessary for growth. And every rupture they have is a rehearsal for them working out who they are. And it's not our job to rescue them. We're the soil. We hold them steady. We give them the nourishment to grow new roots and deeper roots and stronger roots. So sometimes the best thing to say is not much at all. Maybe that sounds really painful, and just take a big deep breath and let it be silent. And that silence just kind of creates this space for whatever needs to surface. And that's where you get the opportunity to co-regulate or demonstrate how to regulate. And it's not really in a way of words, but more in the way that you're present. Now she's licking her feet. Oh my gosh. So I would call this era where your teenagers are evolving as a rearrangement. And, you know, different cultures have different ways. Excuse me, Vita, hop down. Sorry. Every culture has a way of naming what they call adolescence. So I found that the Yolngu people of the NT in the Northern Territory of Australia, they describe this season of rearrangement as a time when the body, spirit, and community all shift into a new balance. And for some people of the Māori mob, the Wakapapa reminds us, each person, that identity isn't something we own, it's something we carry through our relationships to land and lineage. And then there's the Dardiri shared by Elder Miriam Rose Ungamara Borman. The art of deep listening. It's so powerful. Listening to self, listening to country, listening to the silence. And when we listen deeply in this way, without rushing, without rescuing or reacting, we actually allow identity to unfold naturally. And the Indigenous group that I sit in the Path of Ish, one who catches lightning, tells us that, you know, when you watch the branch of a fern unfurl so it can rise up and be a whole branch, it unfurls. It's kind of the same thing with teenagers. They're just, you know, like they're unfurling. Babies, when they come out, they kind of like all scrunched up and take a few weeks to sort of not be so all squished up like they were in their womb. And they're unfurling. So it's kind of like the next layer where your young people are growing a new branch and it's unfurling. And this helps them create what kind of plant, tree, human they want to be. And when we look at nature, nature doesn't demand certainty from a seed. It just kind of provides space, sunlight, and a rhythm. And that's kind of exactly what our teens need as well. So look to nature at times when you're feeling a bit confused or overwhelmed with your teenager and their relationship issues. It's, you know, sitting quietly and being with nature is always a good opportunity to listen deeply, practice listening deeply, and take that back to the space with your young person. So when we look at science, we can see that it also agrees with the elders and that adolescence isn't a time of brokenness, but it's kind of like a natural renovation project. God, I've done so many renovations. It's painful. And so is teenage years. Well, I mean, it can be because, you know, like it's chaotic. you don't know I never know who's coming and going. And sometimes when you choose something, you're not sure if it's actually going to match what you've created. And it's always a bit of a risk, but you do it anyway because you think it might be a good idea. And then when it comes out, you're like, ugh, maybe I should change. It's that process. And the teenage years, if we can compare it to that, is kind of similar. And, during these years, their neural pathways are being pruned and rewired, especially those linked to emotion and decision making. So Alan Shaw, I'll put the links in the show notes, found that boys tend to have higher cortisol reactivity. So they stress fast and then that lingers longer. Whereas Chowdhury, in their research, showed how culture shapes the wiring. Boys are encouraged towards autonomy and girls are encouraged to build connection. But across all brains, males, females, and gender diverse, one thing is universal: the environment. So the adolescent brain learns regulation, not through control or helicopter parenting or fixing or doing everything for them or trying to save them, but through the relationships, just like the natural ecosystems that exist in your gardens or in your farmyards or out in nature. So I'm, especially in this season of my life, I am really, really tuning back into nature to help me decipher and discern what is the best way forward when I want to support my young people. And, before humans had degrees or podcasts, we actually learnt by watching nature. And this is where that ancient wisdom from, the indigenous mob still carry those lines and messages through their DNA and their epigenetics. Like they're still, if we listen carefully, you can hear the connection of Indigenous culture to nature and how nature has, and through their storytelling and through their understanding of their environment, how they can apply that learning to not just surviving, but living in harmonious ways. So I find that fascinating. And so this last few years, I've really been looking back to nature and listening to the ancestors and the Indigenous mob of who still have that connection to nature in a way that I think modern society is slowly moving more and more away from. I try and bring that back into my daily practice so that, and it's not perfect. Let's be real, nothing is perfect in my world, and there is no hiding that. But at the same time, I do think that I am quite resourceful as a parent and willing to sit and listen. Still could always be better, but I think what I'm getting better at each day as my kids get a bit older and move more deeper into these teen emotions and scenarios. And I kind of am expecting the worst, to be honest, because I was a bit of a ratbag teenager myself. So I feel like karma, I'm preparing myself for karma in some ways, and have probably been overcompensating in the sense that I know what I did, and therefore I'm strategically trying to prevent my kids from doing those things and having those mishaps or, painful teenage scenarios that I went through, and shamefully in some spots, but I wasn't the worst kid, but I had some pretty memorable moments that, community might remember. Hopefully no one listening really does. So I kind of, and then to be honest, working with young people in schools, I listened to those kids because I valued their time and their bravery. because it's not always easy talking to an adult, especially someone you're not really that familiar with. And often it took time for me to build relationships with young people in schools, but once they were there, they shared deeply some of their situations. And, that really set the scene for me to just be aware of my parenting practices and the environments I set my children up in. And, I didn't necessarily curb my behavior, but I think I don't know, I can't get myself out of this. I was not a perfect parent when my kids were little, and I certainly didn't give up socialization or, hanging out with my friends and attending things. In fact, I tried to incorporate my kids and socialize my kids as much as possible. And I do think they have quite a strong sense of emotional intelligence and social intelligence where they can read a room quite well. So, and they're quite strong in holding themselves in social circles. But regardless of all that, I've stepped out, I've wandered off my path. But what I was trying to say is I am very imperfect, and I know that my teenage years were turbulent and I found them really hard. So I kind of have not tried to stop my kids from having experiences, but I just tried to create a bit more positive opportunities for experiences that weren't necessarily soul destroying or self-esteem crushing or, humiliating. But I mean, at some point they will get through that. And, there was always a lot of friendship drama in our groups, and you find the way. And I guess in some ways I was lucky that my parents weren't ever very interested in what was happening with me in my social life. So I often was left to work it out myself. And in one way, it made me quite good at navigating social situations. So I guess in understanding that, I probably have, again, overcompensated my kids leading up into their teen years. But at the same time, I still have that aloofness to let them explore and play and work it out for themselves. As I said, I'm not perfect, but I am learning and I'm willing to learn. So I think that's where I look to nature when I'm not sure what to do or I have questions. I take the time to sit quietly and connect in to my surroundings and my environment. And I kind of tune in to what season are we in, what's happening with the trees, how's my veggie patch going, is it growing, is it being eaten by bugs, snails are a problem at the moment. So growth happens in seasons, basically, like particularly it's really nice here being on Bunurong country in Victoria. We have mainly 4 seasons where the trees do shed their leaves during winter. And then you can see we're in spring at the moment and all the trees have their little green buds and they're starting to form the greenery of their foliage. And there's this moment of pause and then the whole tree's like blossoming. It's beautiful. So growth happens in seasons. And, part of the natural process is to have a bit of a dry spell or solitude. And what that is kind of guiding me to understand is that, it's okay to be on your own sometimes. Like my family used to tell me, if no one wants to play with you, just go to the library and read a book. So I did. I used to. And, in that quiet time, I guess I naturally re-regulated myself and went back and everything worked out to some degree, and sometimes friendships on the other end of the spectrum can be quite stormy, and storms are quite natural too. And, like the wind blows and the thunder and everyone, like it's all happening. It's loud, it's noisy, it's rambunctious, like it's all happening and it's intense. And then, it passes and we go back to clear skies and sunlight. So, I just think if we look outside and if we look around us, we can take notes and apply them to ourselves, especially when our young people are going through some really tricky situations. So, it's good to make that space and time for reflection, which I think in this kind of really busy world, we kind of just push on and keep going and push through. And my understanding is that trauma and these types of emotional transactions can get trapped and stored in our bodies. And if we don't process them and let them move through, they pop up as and especially if it's chronic, or especially if it's something that we've really deeply buried, and then start forming patterns and repeating them without knowing, it can create physical sickness. And there's lots of research around to show how emotions and physical ailments intersect. And I also think that's a big reason why we should look to nature and really allow ourselves to reflect and make space and time to let things resolve, just as a natural part of the process of being a human. Because when we try and force things to blossom before the roots are ready, the plant will kind of die anyway. So when we rush in to fix our teen's pain, we're kind of interrupting a sacred biological process. So I just think next time drama hits your house with a tween or a teen, just try stepping outside and taking a big deep breath and asking yourself before you respond, what does my child need? And what does this season need for me to best respond? And, most of the time, it's probably just time and space. So, yeah, deep breaths, fill up your lungs, get the air right down to the bottom, and exhale it all out. So, where I think things get even more fascinating, and I'm a massive nerd, so, I look for this stuff, but science now speaks a language that elders and ancient philosophies like Buddhism already know. So, and that's experiences, just like what I was saying before, but I said emotions, but experiences shape biology. And there were studies done by Raffington, Yehuda, and Peckham that show how stress and trauma can literally change DNA expression. Now, I don't know if anyone's done much reading around epigenetics, but if I find that research up, I will pop it down in the show notes. But basically, the research around Holocaust survivors and the DNA being passed down and the trauma that those people who were experiencing those extreme conditions and their reactions and their behaviors and their cycles were then passed down to the next generation in their DNA, and it could be traced. What are they calling it? Ancestral trauma is in your DNA. So that, to me, and it's now scientifically evidenced. So how connection and safety can rewire it back is the question. How do you create an environment for your DNA and genes to express what they've been holding from your ancestors in a way that is now relevant to this time and place? I know it's super nerdy. Sometimes people get bored of this, but that is my jam right now. How do we, as the adults, as the human, as the parent, as the caregiver, as the grandmother, as the auntie, how do we break these ancestral kind of wounding and traumas to capitalize on our incredible DNA that's been given to us, but epigenetically, which is the expression of that DNA and those genes, how can we train them to express in a way that amplifies the good parts of it, if that makes sense? So My belief is that our homes become the biological ecosystems. When they're predictable, the homes are predictable, attuned, and kind, it helps us to raise healthy kids where we're programming their biology for trust and safety. And you are quite literally, by doing this, shaping your children's future DNA with every regulated breath. I just think that's nuts. And I just think it gives us our power back. You know, we don't have to succumb to all these societal pressures. We just need to reel it back in and allow ourselves to ground in and listen to our kids. Sit with them while they feel their pain so they feel safe. Build up their confidence and self-esteem and capabilities to resolve internal conflict. And if we do that in a home while they're in a safe environment enough, when they've grown their big wings and they're ready to fly from the nest, when something hits them and gets in their way, they have these tools that you've sat with them that they can fall back on and do themselves as adults. And as a parent, I feel like that's incredibly, incredibly powerful. So going back to that time when your child was feeling left out, excluded, not included, finding their friends, working out, is this my group? Is that my group? Can't we all be groups? But no, you can't. But anyway, maybe they can. Who knows? I used to float between groups, but apparently that's not a thing anymore. But how to help the young person form their identity? There's not one story. It's like hundreds and hundreds of different rewrites. And you know that they're gonna like go this way and then nah, that didn't work. Go this way. And then when one lands, reinforce that one because it has a win-win-win-win situation. And that's how the brain, the body, the heart, their spiritual essence can evolve. So I've in the research and some of the reading I've been curating together. Is about, let me see, I've got about 5 different domains, okay? So I'm just going to quickly go through them and look at how different groups of kids, mainly by sex, but we're just going to read this out and we'll see how it goes, okay? So the first category or domain is stress regulation. So the research suggests that for boys, stress regulation is quick cortisol spikes, right? But for girls, better emotion labeling. And for those kids that are gender diverse, more stress from misgendering. Okay. So the parent cue is for all of those categories is to co-regulate yourself before trying to fix their problems. So connection before correction. Okay. So the next domain is identity drive. So boys seek mastery, girls seek belonging, and the gender diverse teens just seek authenticity. And what you can do as a parent is balance freedom and affirmation. Okay? So let them explore and then reaffirm in a safe way, as long as they're not hurting themselves, right? You know, nothing's concrete and you do you, but, you know, and if your values align or don't align, you need to check yourself because, you know, I know this whole creating space for the gender fluid is tricky for society, but people going through it often have a really good handle on it. It's their reaction to the people around them who is the part that's hard to manage. But anyway, I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Social pressures, maybe this will come up. Boys struggle with vulnerability norms. Girls face comparison culture. And the gender diverse young people feel the pressure to explain. Poor things, I know. Parent thing to do is just model your own vulnerability and advocate for yourself and coach them how to advocate for themselves and speak up. It's really quite hard, actually, if you don't do it naturally. It's a skill you get to learn with teenagers, basically, because they are your mirror, and it's, not going to, like I was talking about, oh, I was a bad teenager, blah, blah, blah. But teenagers back in my day are going to be different to teenagers in this day, even though my brain probably still thinks I'm a bit of a teenager, and I know I definitely act like it sometimes, but it's all about perception. My perception, I actually know I'm a 45-year-old lady. My body's telling me that, but my brain would like to be younger and sassier, but it's not. So basically what I'm saying is be vulnerable and say, I am not your age. I've got no idea what's going on in your body and your mind or your social situation. But you know what? I will sit here and I'll listen, and I'm here if you need me. And actually, you can advocate for them. Would you like me to say something to your teacher to just let them know what's going on, so that if you are sitting by yourself, they might be able to come up and say hello or what have you. There are ways you can do it without solving their problem, right? So just modeling vulnerability and modeling advocating for yourself and offering, not going in and doing it without permission. And I know that probably sounds a bit woo-woo and soft, but it's actually just teaching respect and learning ways to communicate backwards and forwards. So, okay, moving on to the next domain, which is resilience pathways. Boys use humor and action. Girls use empathy and story. And the gender diverse seek affirmation and safety. So, as a parent, repair fast after missteps. So if you stuff up, if you revert and just jump in and ring that mum out of auto dial and autopilot and mama bear protection, stepping up and asking, what's up with your kid? Why did you do that? What have you? I don't know, however you do it. Just let your young person know, "Oh, look, I'm really sorry." I mean, it might create more ripples, I can imagine, but just let them know that I rang them. I'll ring them back and apologize, but I'm just letting you know that I did this. I'm sorry. And let's let's talk this out and find a united way to move forward. It's apologize, find a solution, and repair the mistake. Because if you puncture a tire, you can get a patch and put a patch on and fix a tire. You know what I mean? Like, you can fix the tire, you can fix the situation. Well, you don't have to fix it. You can find a solution that is something that allows you to move on. Okay, next domain, mental health risks. This is like, back in my parents' day, using the word mental health was like a dirty word, and mental health doesn't exist, blah, blah, blah. Okay, 2025 people, we know mental health exists. We know the science. There's so much online, on social media, on the news. Every newspaper, magazine, whatever you read talks about mental health. So it is here, it is real. And what happens with boys is they externalize. They might act out, they might punch on, they might go set a fire up. I don't know. Boys externalize. Girls internalize. I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm the worst, me. And the gender diverse kids, well, they distress when unseen. So it's like, I don't even exist. Why am I even here? So what us as parents can do is normalize seeking support, encourage help-seeking behaviour beyond our little family dynamic, connect them with a therapist, a psychologist, a doctor, a nurse, a coach, whoever, to create a safety network, and work on your connection. Like, go sit outside and look at the stars. I mean, full moon in Aries just finishing up. Like, go look at the moon. It's freaking stunning. Do it together and like analyze it. Just spend that time and connect. And, you know, we're all between boys, girls, and the gendered fluidities. Different wiring, same need. They all need a regulated parent who offers safety for experimentation and a sense of belonging. Cannot express enough a sense of belonging, regardless of what they look like, what their sexual identity is, what their identity is. You know, that sense of I belong is profoundly influential on their sense of well-being and mental health. So if adolescence is considered a brain remodel or a, what did I call it? A renovation, then identity, forming the identity, is the test of decor. Okay. Boys hang independence on the walls, girls decorate with connection, and some teens, they just repaint the whole room in their own colours. And Lisa Diamond calls this a healthy and natural variation in identity development. And new research shows that up to 12% of teens identify outside the binary when given the option. So diversity isn't instability, it's resilience. And like a biodiverse forest, the Amazon, the more identities we honour, the stronger the ecosystems become. So we'll do one more thing about belonging because it's so important. For gender diverse teens, stress doesn't come from who they are, but from how they're received. When families affirm identity, names, pronouns, curiosity, instead of fear, cortisol levels drop and regulation improves all round. Belonging rewires biology faster than any therapy session. And Ruth Feldman's research shows that parent-child brainwaves literally synchronize through shared rhythms, breath, tone, eye contact. It's all co-regulation, and it's co-regulation through being present. And you know what amplifies that? Nature. So go walking together, garden, sit under a tree, watch the moon. The Earth's slow pulse helps both the nervous system and helps you find a rhythm. Again, if you want to. So psychologist Graham Music calls this nurturing natures. Indigenous wisdom extends it even further. We regulate not alone, but in relation to all our kin, human, animal, elemental. So cooking, swimming, stargazing, these things aren't just bonding activities. They're nervous system medicine. Co-regulation through nature. You belong to something bigger than your own mind, and you belong to life. And that is the medicine that you need to share with yourself and your young people. So 5 ways you can ground in to co-regulate, which would be, first of all, before you jump in and try and fix, take that time to breathe and regulate, and do the same, create the same space with your young person, and just allow that space to be without flying off the handle and exacerbating the current situation. Name the feeling, not the label. This feels uncomfortable. Not, what a little brat, you know, that's so mean, they should never have done that, you know, that sounds uncomfortable. Number 3, let nature hold the tension. Sit outside, take a deep breath, and just be. I know it sounds woo-woo, but it's actually not. And as humans, that was our normal, and it's only recently that we don't do those things. So, number 4, repair the rupture quickly and compassionately. Be honest. Oh, I messed up. I'm really sorry I did that. Should we find a way to move forward? Like, oh, I did this stupid thing. Maybe I'm really sorry. I wasn't thinking. I was in a rush. Don't make excuses. You can make excuses, but be real about it. Like, you don't make up bullshit excuses. Like, be legit. And that's that vulnerability piece. Like, share, oh, man, I was having a silly adult moment. I just totally forgot. I went into mama bear protection mode and I just, and apologize. You're coaching them how to be good humans in a way that's respectful and compassionate and empathetic, but not pushovers who just roll over and let people walk over. It's that balance. And stay curious. Number 5, stay curious. And communal and connected. And, it's okay to sort of ask yourself, who am I becoming as a parent of a teen or tween? And then, question your young person. What kind of person do you want to be? Like, how do you want to be in this situation? And if they want to be a little brat, let them be a little brat. They'll learn their lesson quick enough. The other kids will pull them into line. Do you know what I mean? Like, just allow that space to happen. And by doing that, you're allowing your young people, your young person, your teen, tween, to form their identity within the community that they're in. And, it can always be changed. It can always be rewired. And it's not always a direct reflection of you. I think sometimes parents get really worried that if their kid says or does something at school that looks like it's come from the parent. Sometimes it has, right? And sometimes the home environment does fall out on the school grounds. But you know what? That too is a mirror, and, we can all adjust. Nothing is right or wrong, and we are all able to exist in this space. And it's just a part of the process of being a human. So parenting through adolescence is an act of remembering that confusion is sacred and that growth takes time. And control is the opposite of connections. Behind the slamming doors and the hormone hurricanes, something really beautiful and miraculous is forming. And that's a whole connected human, wired for empathy, attuned to rhythm, capable of love that heals beyond themselves. So keep showing up, keep laughing, keep apologizing when you get it wrong. Just remember you're not meant to be perfect as a parent, but if you're present, it can just change the game, because adolescence isn't a crisis to survive. It's an initiation for them and for you. So I'm MagnetiK Mumma. I hope you found something a little bit intriguing in this episode, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks for listening to MagnetiK Mumma, where we unpacked some of the real stories behind tween and teen identity. So if this episode helped you see your child and yourself with more compassion, share it with another parent and subscribe for more conversations on parenting authentically while living a life you love.